Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hello, Pia. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. We have a lot of people today from different parts of the world. Uh, let's check.
That's crazy. I've seen at least 10 places.
Yeah, exactly.
Countries.
Hamilton, California,
Are really
Mumbai,
cool ones. Malta, Austria, UK.
Italy, Ontario,
We got
Sweden,
Caribbean.
Michigan, Saudi Arabia, London, Brazil. Is it like a World Cup or something?
Sneak
Los
peek.
Angeles.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, hello, Alex. Dallas, North Carolina, Denmark, Poland. Okay, Lagos, Nigeria. Yes, we are quite. So the MCP love will spread all the world, Alex. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So maybe we can do a quick intro because we have some good news to share while you are preparing up your green screen, your virtual production, and we can take it from there. How does it sound? Okay, let's kick off. Hello, everyone. I hope wherever you are right now that you are enjoying the new era of all these MCPs and AI with us. And we are kickstarting the first era of all these interesting sessions, workshops, which will a little bit intensive for the next 10 days. So hopefully we will make sure that you are ready. Either if you are joining hackathon, that you can be very well prepared. If not, you can just basically enjoy yourself, your these kind of skills that you have, and you can bring that enjoyment to a level that you can build something around this, which don't forget to share with us. So let me share my screen quickly, just to go through that. Actually, maybe Pia, you can a little bit tell us about us. Why why all this excitement coming from? Why we are so excited nowadays?
Yeah, definitely. So, hello everyone. Welcome. My name is Pia Moras. I am streaming in from Barcelona, but I will be in Los Angeles next month. I'm super excited for this first time collaboration with SIGGRAPH. I must highlight that this is the first time that SIGGRAPH is doing a hackathon in maybe over 20 years. So, this is the biggest excitement that we have. And we are doing our second Worlds in Action hack. First one was in San Francisco, second one is coming to LA. We are almost 2 weeks away from the hackathon, so it's happening July 18th to 19th, preceded by a whole day of workshops on the 17th. And then on the 19th, we have an amazing award ceremony and we transition into the week of SIGGRAPH. So that's going to be July 19th to 23rd. And during the week of SIGGRAPH, we have really cool opportunities for all of our hackers that will be with us on site, including showcase opportunities to show projects at SIGGRAPH to the SIGGRAPH audience. We're going to be joining forces with Appy Hour. Alex will also be with us on site. And we're super excited because this is actually the first workshop in our series of workshops. And I think it's one of the ones with the highest participation. So super excited to be with you all. I will be on site. I'm the head of partnerships. So if you have any questions, want to partner, want to sponsor, please reach out to me. And I'll hand it over to Farhan and Alex for an amazing workshop. Great to meet you all.
Perfect. Thank you, Pia. Maybe one question to you and to Alex, since both of you either submitting a paper or part of the committee. For those who haven't heard of SIGGRAPH before, it's probably a very minority, but how would you define, like, what should we expect from this whole SIGGRAPH week? That why all the excitement towards this SIGGRAPH? Like, maybe anything you would like to share? Why it's like a defining event for most of the graphics related and game engines, etc.
Yeah, I would say it's the biggest graphics conference of the world. It's the most iconic one. It's been going on for the longest time and it has a very loyal audience. So I know folks that have been going to SIGGRAPH for over 20 years. It's a religious pilgrimage. Everyone goes back. And I'm particularly excited because we have a special program called Spatial Storytelling. It's a new subcommittee within SIGGRAPH where Alex is going to be having a panel and we're curating sort of this very cutting edge, newest research happening in spatial storytelling, in XR, in motion capture, in graphics. So it's going to be an amazing time. And there are more than 20 of these sort of subsections of SIGGRAPH and more than 20,000 people coming. We expect around like 7,000 people just in the spatial storytelling. So it's going to be a huge event, huge conference.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, like the first time that Gaussian splats are being like a meeting with the rest of the world, it's happened at SIGGRAPH. Lots of like a Walt Disney technologies that we are seeing on animations now. They released that as a like a talk first time here, so it's really like a monumental from a perspective of the cutting edge stuff going on. And I believe this is also very exciting because this is the first SIGGRAPH after all of these graphics, video model, and all the stuff happening like in the last couple of months, or let's say maximum 1 year, right? All these MCPs, etc. So it will be amazing to see these new enhancements and these new breakthrough that we will see witness there as well. So really looking forward to that. So before SIGGRAPH, we have a few important sessions that we would like to quickly share with you. So this is the first one. Thank you, Alex, for joining us today. And on Thursday, we will have another session which starts with the hackathon info session for those who are already joining or still thinking about this. Please make sure that you join this hackathon info session and team formation session, because you can actually pitch your idea and then also get a lot of information how you can best be prepared for the hackathon, SIGGRAPH hackathon. And in the same day, right following up this info session, we will have a very interesting splat analyzer focused session. Maybe you saw that gets viral multiple times with Nigel and the team. They managed to bring some interesting splat analyzer, which I will share with you with David Romero. We will have a very interesting session there on this Thursday. By the way, this all of these things are online, so you don't need to be in person anywhere. Everything is online according to Pacific time zone. We wrote the times, so our team will share with you the SenseAI Luma page calendar link, so you can actually register quickly all of them and get the best out of these. And on July 8th, it will be our back-to-back pre-hack series of workshops from Ian, Nigel, Lucas will also talk a little bit about the 3D reconstruction. So anything you would like to learn about world models, 3D GS, and also how to bring them to a game engine web. This is the moment for July 8th. It will be a quite back-to-back intensive workshop on next week. And afterwards, July 9th, we will have another interesting session for those who would like to learn a little bit of Kotlin for especially building stuff with native, for smart classes, for any kind of native XR tool. So this also gives an opportunity because we will basically show how you can learn native, especially Kotlin, in around 1 hour, that you will be able to compare what you already know from Unity or XR, and you will compare that with a native language. So it will be a perfect pivoting opportunity to also bring another programming language to your tech stack. And right after that session, we have Pico team that will talk a little bit about Spatial SDK, which also use Kotlin, and Web Spatial Emulator, because these are also very interesting categories that will be part of the hackathon at SIGGRAPH, like we did on March. And the good thing is we want to make sure that you also deploy this to a spatial environment, whatever you are building, either if you want to build an agentic workspace or multi-agent command center orchestration, agentic orchestration. This is a moment that you can really learn. And Nigel has very interesting OpenClaw spatial command center that he will give more information about that. And the one on the right, the Pico Discord invite, I think this is very interesting because um, our team also prepared this link for you because there's a special Project Swan early access opportunities. As you know, Pico has just announced Project Swan, and they will be able to actually make a lot of announcements about that. There is a chance that you will be able to gain access throughout this Discord channel. So just a reminder, this will be a great opportunity for you to already find ways to explore this new device that will come out quite soon. And lastly, for those who are joining us with the hack, we will have a pre-hack keynote workshops and networking happening on Friday, July 17th in LA, downtown. So would like to see all of you there. It's a little bit more going hands-on, whatever we are learning on online, and it will be a perfect last-minute preparation crash course for hackers. And all of these sessions, I know that it's a lot, but you can already check this QR code and then register any one of them you are interested. For in terms of kits, I already mentioned, right, this splat analyzer, which is being announced already a few weeks ago, and the idea is how you can bring either a word model or a 3D reconstructed scene splat and make it more with scene understanding and contextual awareness. As you see, everything inside the splat is not static anymore, and it becomes actually everything inside is actually with bounding boxes with depth data that it's being actually stored to the splat analyzer, so you can actually find a way to make your splat way more interactive or even build games around this. And the thing on the right, we have already announced that on March that with our team, Johannes, and also Nigel, we have built the first end-to-end WordLab Marble kit that you can run your directly API of WordLabs inside Unity, inside Unreal and Web. This will be also interesting because we will have WordLabs team joining us at the hackathon, so you can directly also work with them for these interesting kits. And you can also join the GitHub and then make a star maybe to help our team to get much more interest from different parts of the audience. And all the links of these repos is under this QR code. And I would like to also thank to our partners that makes this possible, including Agile Lens. I'm always telling Alex and his team is really OG of all these like workflows, especially when it comes to Unreal, but now with other game engines that he's also exploring a lot. And now he has done a lot of things on MCP as well. So I don't know how he managed, but he managed to bring it under 1 hour, all the things that he's already learning. So expect a very condensed and very like a back-to-back like a learnings here. Everything will be recorded, so you will be able to also follow along afterwards as well. So without further ado, I would like to extend the stage to Alex and the Agile Lens team. And thank you for joining us, Alex. Looking forward to hearing more from you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Farhan and Pia and the whole team. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm always doing some different mic setups. So here we are with my podcast mic, which has been in storage for a little bit. But very happy to see everyone. I want to set everyone's expectations correctly. This could be an hour. It could be 4 hours. I'm basically going to talk until like there's no one left in the room. This is the first time that I have properly tried to coalesce, condense, codify some thoughts on how I'm starting to approach AI. Most of the teaching I do, as many of you know, has been very focused on Unreal. This is a relatively new venture for me, and I am not, an engineer. I'm not a coder by training. This is going to be very much my lessons and tools and guidelines as they have been useful to me. And I hope in that specificity you find some universality. We'll definitely have time for Q&A. Feel free to use the Zoom Q&A as we go. I've got some good friends from AgileLens hanging out in the chat. So if any questions come up specific to our work at AgileLens, they'll also be very well primed to answer some of those questions too. And without further ado, let's just dive right in and go into this lovely adventure. Thank you, Laura, there for my LinkedIn. Very kind. Oh, and I'll also mention that what you're getting here is a very raw pass at like something that will at some point become a course. Probably everything I'm presenting today actually wants to be 3 or 4 or 5 more dedicated courses for some of these different topics. And so do sign up at our training website at alexcoulinpresents.com/training if you would like to be alerted for when some of these become like a little bit less. We're going to cover 1,000 things in an hour, and more like we're going to cover one thing in 2 hours and go much more in depth. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get into it. Share sound. I always forget that share sound checkbox. All right. Okay. Everyone see a thing? Okay.
Yes. Perfect.
Great. Okay. So first thing I'll let you know, for anyone who's seen a presentation from me in the past few months, this is a very AI aided presentation. And normally when I've used these tools, which I'll talk a little bit more about as we go, I spend a lot of time cleaning it up and making it much more my voice and trying to like sand off all the rough edges. So it's like very similar to the kinds of presentations that I've given for, you know, the past 15 years. Here, I intentionally decided to leave some of the AI jank to it because I think it'll actually serve some useful discussion points as we discuss some of the ways that AI becomes useful when it gets you, 80% of the way there, and then you really need to spend twice as much time for that final 20% to get it to where you want it to be. So you'll see some little like weird things in here and little eccentricities, and I'll try to point them out. This whole deck I will make available to you. So if you stick around until, at least 2 o'clock. I'll share the link so anyone who wants to check this out on their own, complete with lots of other links and goodies and Easter eggs in here, is more than welcome to see that themselves. So
Perfect.
We're covering a ton of stuff today. Yeah, go ahead, Fran.
One thing, since we are doing that for people who are listening to us asynchronously after this, right? So
Yes.
we are recording now, just to make sure if you have like a chapters or some kind of like at the end that if you want to get questions, it's up to you. You can either separate this to chapters so we can at least have the full recording from you, or you can answer the questions afterwards. Up to you. I just want to tell you that the more that it is uninterrupted, at least between chapters, we can still do, but during the session, better. So the person who is watching that afterwards will have a seamless Netflix-like experience.
That's what we aim for, a Netflix-like experience. I love it.
Exactly.
Okay,
Perfect.
cool.
Thank
Let's
you.
do it. Great. And I already see some good chat happening. And yes, here's the thing too. There are going to be times when I say a thing where someone in the chat is like, that's totally different from how I do this. Get that conversation going. I want to see those answers. I'm sure other people here are going to find these things useful. Again, this is going to be very specific to what has been good for me, and I hope it ends up being good for you as well. Okay. Let's go in here a little bit. I'm also going to give a little refresh to my page because I believe I just got a recent push.
By the way, anyone
Yep.
who is also planning to ask questions, there's a Q&A tab below. If you didn't see that, you can maybe click the more button, but you will see the Q&A tab. Please submit your questions there because we are really crowded. It is impossible for Alex and us to find your question. So if you have a question, feel free to use the Q&A tab and then submit your question. We make sure that it will be answered by the end of the session.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So let's give this one more refresh, go full screen, and kick it off here. So first, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Alex. I came from a background in architecture and theater, and I've always been interested in emerging tech. As an architect, I was trying to use tools like 3D modeling and real-time engines as a way to better express the design intent of my buildings, and learned a lot of various tools along the way. I really fell in love with Unreal Engine about 10 years ago and started to use that as much as I could in my workflows. And what I've really found in the last few months, as I've started to use more AI and agentic tools and MCP as part of my workflow, that I'm starting to upgrade with a lot of other tools as well that I never thought that I would have the time or resources to become proficient in. And of course, what I'm finding is all the knowledge I have about 3D modeling and Unreal and the tools I was familiar with are very much aiding in what I'm learning now. I think that's the last one. Blender. There we go. Okay. And then just very briefly, AgileLens is this wonderful company I've been running for about 10 years now. We work on a lot of crazy large projects for folks around the world who usually come to us basically saying, I don't know if this is possible, but do you think we can do X crazy thing? And you can find out more about some of what we do at agilelens.com. And I thought it might be useful to show a little bit of this tools journey, which I just alluded to. So let's say 10 years ago, 2016, just to give a nice clean decade marker, I was using things like Revit, 3ds Max, Rhino, SketchUp, Unity, Unreal. These were all kind of in circulation on my day-to-day, task list of different things I was doing. And over time, I found that Unreal Engine was becoming a robust enough tool for me in my workflow, especially with virtual reality and all that, that I really started to feel comfortable dropping a lot of those other tools and just using Unreal Engine in place of a lot of the other tools that I've been using before. Now, as I've started to integrate Claude and again, more of these AI tools, I'm finding that there's a lot of instances where, sometimes Claude will be the one to suggest like, actually, Unreal Engine's not a good tool for this. We could do this way faster in Blender or Godot, or we can do something with Xcode and Reality Kit. And I say, oh, okay, good to know. And I very much treated this opportunity for Claude to be like, actually, there's another tool that's better for this as a chance to say, great, let's see how that works. And a lot of what I'll be talking about today is what has ended up working and all the new tools and workflows I've been introduced to by letting Claude kind of guide me on some of these other paths. I know there's a lot of controversy around AI right now, and a lot of it's totally justified. I will say that at least for my workflow and the tasks that I do day to day and the stuff we're doing at AgileLens, I feel like I've made some kind of peace with it. There's something here that feels good and satisfying and doesn't feel like it's taking any agency away from me and the things I want to do. It is streamlining things and creating a lot of opportunities for me to focus more on the things that I want to do and taking care of the more administrative, bureaucratic, or just like, limitations of my own knowledge of some of the things that are possible with these tools. And then I'm also learning new workflows that I then will still do myself, even when no AI is in the picture. All the text you're seeing in this presentation, by the way, came from Claude. I'll show you one quick thing, which was that I basically made this whole presentation by feeding Claude a bunch of the things that I wanted to talk about. I just did kind of a quick little like, blah, blah, blah. Here's all the things I'd like to cover. And as you're going to see, Claude has such a knowledge of everything that I've been doing for the past few months that it actually did a fairly good job of knowing like, yes, this particular case study, this particular example, let's get that in there. And you'll see that it did a fairly good job. I give it like a B+ of how well it took my raw notes of like the things I wanted to talk about and why, and expressing my intent through this presentation. I added a little bit to the title of the presentation here because so much of my workflow lately has been Apple Vision Pro and iOS and everything in the Mac OS ecosystem, which is still a relatively new ecosystem for me. And AI and MCP tools have been incredibly helpful for that. So some of what's on the agenda for some of the time we have together today. I just want to cover some of the basics for anyone who's coming into this kind of fresh and cold. Let's talk about, what an MCP is and how these tools start to become useful for you. We're going to talk a little bit about these different tools like Unreal Engine and Godot and whatnot. We're going to look at a lot of different case studies. We're going to talk about a second brain and why that's so important. And we'll hopefully get you to a point where whether you're already doing these things or you're coming to this totally fresh, there's something here for you to learn and take away. Some of you know that for like Unreal Fest a few times now, I've done this kind of like, wish I learned this sooner talk. And very similar to that, like I'm trying to do something here that is useful for everyone from novices to people who've been in AI and MCP tools far longer than me. So I thought it might be useful to just start with what is an MCP. It stands for Model Context Protocol. And what it is it's a shared open specification that's only been around for a few years. I believe it was actually invented by Anthropic. And a good analogy that actually was suggested to me by Claude here is I was like, how do I explain this? Is it's like kind of like USB-C. So anyone who's as old as me and has been around since the 90s, we might remember there were times when there were a lot of different ports on computers. You had serial ports and various kinds of USB ports, and there was FireWire for a while. And it was really frustrating if you bought a device and realized, like, I don't have a way to plug into this. And essentially, something like USB-C as a more universal standard now is becoming a very clean way for devices and computers and whatnot to talk to each other. Even Apple has started to move off of using lightning cables in USB-C, I believe because Europe told them they had to. And so what an MCP allows for is kind of a universal way for AI models to talk to different applications and ask questions and say, hey, there's a ton of stuff in your API, because APIs often are not made in such a way that it's very readable by AI. It's like you kind of already need to know what you're looking for if you use an API. And so what you get with an MCP is something that's like a very clear way to talk and go back and forth. Another analogy I heard is it's kind of like a waiter. So if the AI is the chef in the kitchen, you have this MCP who's the waiter who's going back and forth and finding out the plain language, natural language discussion from the customer, comes back and knows how to translate that to the AI and ask the right questions in order to get the chef to make the thing you want. Now, what's kind of interesting about my particular use case, and maybe makes me completely the wrong person to give this talk, is that a lot of the workflows I've been doing have actually been totally without an MCP for a variety of reasons that we'll go into. I've actually found that in many cases, I'm able to do all the things that I want to do headlessly, but that comes from a level of training and getting your models to the point where they understand exactly the right commands, Python, whatever, things that need to be sent out in order to trigger certain things. And then you can run some of these applications headlessly. They don't even need to be open. The number of things I've done with Unreal and Blender and Godot and Reality Kit without even having them open, without any special MCP tools installed, is pretty remarkable. I'm actually now at the point, for those who don't know, that before I go to bed at night, I can be like, hey, Claude, before I wake up in the morning, can you build an app to show me all the latest visionOS 27 features? Because I didn't have the patience today to watch all of WWDC. And then sure enough, I wake up the next morning and there's an app waiting on my Vision Pro, already pushed to test flight, and it has like all these things going. But that's not a thing that you would be able to do out of the box because that required building up a level of knowledge that just it needs to be there as a second brain. So kind of like an MCP, the AI agent knows exactly how to route the particular tasks you request of it into doing certain kinds of things. I know for Unreal Engine at Unreal Fest a couple weeks ago, there was a lot of criticism from people who saw the MCP demo and thought, oh, hey, I'm going to try to do exactly the same thing. And they were looking at like exactly the command line things that were punched into Claude. And they're like, when I did that with the MCP plugin, it didn't work. And the reason for that isn't necessarily that Epic's doing anything tricky or sneaky or faking it. It's that I'm sure that particular setup of Claude that Epic was demonstrating has a very robust second brain and a ton of skills and context. And that workflow has been done 50 times. And it now knows a very streamlined way to create exactly that demo without a lot of the hiccups that you or I would encounter trying to do it from scratch. And then one thing that I've started to learn as I've branched out into more tools, because I was really attached to Unreal Engine for a long time. Like I really had a relationship with it and such that like sometimes even going outside of Unreal Engine felt like, why would I do that? I can do this in Unreal Engine. Why wouldn't I? And a mantra I've started to use a little bit more is to love the work you do, love your process. Don't fall in love with the specific tools, because there's always going to be opportunities for using new tools, expanding your tools. And now with AI, more and more opportunities to write your own tools or edit tools if it's something open source. And so there's a ton of chances now to actually build better versions of the things you need. And so even this whole presentation, I've hated PowerPoint and even Google Slides to a degree for a long time. So a couple months ago, I was giving this talk at Harvard for Harvard XR, and I was like, all the ways I'm trying to do this PowerPoint about the talk was about 10 years of running Agile Lens and the things I've learned. And like I wasn't happy with what I could do with the PowerPoint or Google Slides version. I wanted something more interactive, something more dynamic, something that allowed for, easily like clicking on things and having other things come up. And I started to build this other tool, which I call Spatial Deck, alongside that. And now that's probably what I will do 99% of my presentations in the future. And it's just a very natural way for me to build a presentation and clarify my thoughts. And it's open source. You can use it. There's links for all this stuff as we get to the end of the deck. Don't feel like you have to try to type stuff or note these things down. Again, you'll get access to this whole presentation. But I like this thing that Claude suggested here that what did it say? You know what? They might have removed it. Maybe I thought the language was too negative. Oh, no, there it is. There it is. Great tools come from hating bad ones. I think that's actually kind of elegant and lovely. But the more frustrated you get, if you have the capability to build a better tool or to modify or fork an open source tool, you're going to find a way to do that to make it more helpful to you and your needs. Sure, Claude. Yeah, agents change the game. Very, very pithy. Yeah. Great. And so I've got all these nice little diagrams to help explain some of the stuff too. Of course, yes, it used to be that even back as far as December, I started to play a little bit more with some of this agentic coding. I wasn't even really familiar with that term, but Apple had kindly invited a few members of Agile Lens and I to their office in New York City for like a 3-day hackathon. And I wanted to try to really push Unreal Engine with Apple Vision Pro. It's been very limited ever since it came out with support in Unreal Engine 5.4. And I hit a wall pretty quick for like, the Apple employees here can't help me that much. And so at a certain point, I was like, I should just be using this time with all these great Apple Vision OS employees to do more with Reality Kit and Xcode and the actual native tools. And so in addition to chatting with them, I was like, let's see how AI can help me with this. And I started using Gemini, which comes, free if you're on a Google Workplace plan. And I had this workflow where the AI would suggest the left diagram here to say, hey, here's some code. And I say, oh, okay. And I'd put it into Xcode and I would like kind of understand it. And then there'd be an error. And sometimes I could fix the error on myself. And other times I'd go back to Gemini and say, hey, it gave me an error. That's confusing. And Gemini says, oh, I know why that happened. Dummy me. And then gives me the corrected code. And it's something that I think forced me to be a little bit more in the loop with understanding what was happening, but it was also very slow. And I'm getting much more comfortable. And I hate that term vibe coding because it implies that you have no idea like what's going on behind the scenes. But I am getting more comfortable with this workflow now, where it's like I am very intentionally specifying exactly what I want something to do. Sometimes it's on the UX side, sometimes it's on the visual side, sometimes it's even on the efficiency of the code side, because I know certain kinds of blueprint methods or C++ methods, if we're talking about Unreal, are going to be more efficient than others. Use this CVAR, don't use this one, change this project setting. And like, it's still kind of vibe coding because I'm not necessarily even in the editor, but it is drawing on my knowledge of how these tools work. So another example I'd give would be back when I was in architecture school. The first year I was in architecture school, I wasn't allowed to use a computer at all. And I had a professor who called me Big Pen because so many of my drawings had like smudges, because a lot of my like art portfolio was like charcoal drawings, and that was kind of what I did. But like I thought, despite how much I got made fun of for not having super clean, nice drawings, there was a lot of value in learning, the feeling of doing different kinds of line weights and ink on Mylar. And then when I did start to use CAD and Rhino and 3ds Max and these other 3D tools, that conceptual foundation of what makes a clean drawing carried with me. And so similarly, like, I don't think it's that healthy. I've got young kids that I'm trying to teach to survive in this upcoming world. And I don't think it's healthy to jump right into full vibe coding, because it's really valuable to understand enough about what goes on behind the scenes. You don't need to go to the level of like, we're writing everything in assembly, but enough to understand like some of the differences between good code and bad code, and even just like good game loops if they're trying to design their own games. So by the time you get to this level on the right, I would highly recommend that you at least have done enough things manually that you are automating things that you already do know how to do, and that you're working from that foundation. So again, this is kind of a similar little diagram. Thanks, Claude. Two different ways to work. There's more of an interactive version where you are inside. Oh, actually, no, this is a little bit different. This is talking more about headless versus when you are in the editor. Because all the things I started to do when I first got started with OpenClaw, a few months ago, it was all very much like inside Unreal Engine using the various MCP plugins that had released. There's hundreds of them at this point, and trying to find a way to make sure that as I typed a thing, the thing was happening in Unreal Engine and I could watch it all live. Now, in a more headless workflow, first of all, you save a lot of resources on your computer. I do 95% of my work now on a M1 MacBook from 2021. It does help that it has 64 gigabytes of RAM. But even with things like Unreal and Xcode and VisionOS simulators, I run a lot of these things headlessly because really all I need is a screenshot every so often that just shows me, here's what it looks like now. I don't necessarily need to be interactively in there all the time. Also, a lot of times I'm not doing things from scratch, especially in Unreal Engine. I'm often starting from a client project that has a lot of stuff in it. And it's like, okay, we need to optimize this to a certain degree. And Claude can help me in a lot of ways to do that without me actually needing to have the engine open. One of my favorite workflows I've started to develop is to take a quest, plug in a meta quest to my computer, and it's just like, okay, we're only hitting 30 frames a second on here. This sucks. I've run out of ideas for how to optimize the performance. Claude, can you try to run through some ideas here? And by the way, here's a great tip. Learn from Claude. Like if you ask Claude to do a thing where it's going to run through a bunch of loops and try to figure something out, follow along with it. And even if you're just watching passively, you can chime in and say like, no, you're an idiot. Like keep instant stereo on. But in some cases, if you start to see the workflow it's going through to do something like get your frame rate up and do profiling and find opportunities to reduce draw calls and oh, we're CPU bound right now. Let's do this. Now we're GPU bound. Let's do this. You can learn a lot because there's tons of workflows that I didn't even know were possible in Unreal Engine. And again, I've been in this engine for about 10 years now. So what I'll do quite a bit is I'll plug in a MetaQuest to my computer. You can do this wirelessly with ADB Wi-Fi, but this is easier. And what I'll do is if I'm telling Claude, tell me optimize something on MetaQuest, I'll have it using ADB commands and installing to the headset and screenshotting what it sees. I'll just leave the headset in like some position. And if I'm doing things with pass-through, it can figure out things with pass-through. It can screenshot what it sees. It can read logs. It can fire, various commands. And it can do a lot of testing. And if I'm just like, hey, run a loop until you get the frame rate to be 30, don't cut down on the quality of this metahuman, like you can give it guidelines, I will oftentimes come back and see that it has done some incredible work. And of course, I can ask for a summary at the end. If I'm not watching it piece by piece with every step of the way of what it's doing, I can still end up at a point where it's like, yeah, the frame rate's where it needs to be. Oh, it did a little bit too much optimization on the lighting. The shadows don't look as good anymore. I should have clarified that. And yeah, you start to have a back and forth, but sometimes just that question of like, what did you ultimately do? And it's like, I used these weird C-bars that you've never even heard of. That's kind of cool. And it's like, great, now I know those CVARs. And even in instances where I'm not using AI, I might keep that in my own little memory banks, my very fallible memory banks, and start to use some of that myself. And then I've got a nice little chart here. I was just like, hey, Claude, based on everything you know about the workflows we've been doing, can you do a quick little diagram of when you can do things headless or when you need an MCP? And you'll see that in many cases, we've been able to do a lot of things headlessly here. And so again, you don't always need like a special plugin in order to accomplish what you need. Again, don't worry about reading that too close. You will get the deck. And yeah, in many cases, I find headless does the heavy lifting. And if you're a relentless multitasker like me, and I've got, Claude going with 10 sessions at a time on one computer, yes, it can be doing things in Blender and the VisionOS simulator and Godot and Unreal Engine, and it can do a lot more if it's headless because it's not using as many resources. It doesn't need to render as much right there in front of you. So, a little bit of an awkward diagram here, but it's like MCP as needed. We use that USB port. I think the analogy that I didn't go over in a few slides back was like doing it headlessly. That's almost like a wireless connection, like a Wi-Fi sort of thing. Like, why worry about how to plug in exactly at all if you can just communicate wirelessly with something? So yeah, USB-C, good analogy for MCP. Wireless is a good analogy for when you are able to do things headless. Structure is the secret sauce, yes. And so what Claude is trying to communicate here, based on all the things that we've learned together, is that as you start to set up a scene, especially because the times Claude has been most helpful for me in a practical like work sense is when I'm having it refine a project that I've already built. So starting from not nothing, but like, here's my clay, here's the things I'm trying to solve. And if you do a good job naming things, organizing your project, that's really going to help Claude out, because it will stumble over everything. If you've got a light that's named cube, like it might figure out that it's actually a light, but it's going to look for, especially depending on the level of thinking that you're telling Claude to do. And by the way, I'm saying Claude, it can be Codex, it can be anything. Like, I prefer Claude for a few reasons, but it's going, if the thinking is tamped down to be prioritizing speed over depth of thinking, it will be like, this is called cube, it must be a cube. If it's thinking longer, it might be like, wait a minute, it says it's a cube, but it's actually a light. So try to name things like AI will read it. I mean, that's kind of a funny headline, because you should name things like a human will read it too. Humans also like it when they are looking at an Unreal Engine project or Xcode or anything else, and things are clearly named and organized. One funny thing I ran into back in my Gemini vibe coding days was it was so much easier to just have one giant Swift file. And so I knew that was like a terrible way to go. But when it came to just like, easily copying and pasting things and not breaking things, it was just easier back all those months and months ago in December of 2025 to just have my entire app in one Swift file with, 10,000 lines of code, just in terms of like making sure that it was going to compile correctly. I'm glad I'm past there now. By the way, I haven't really opened Xcode in a couple months, unless there's like a weird little provisioning profile issue, or there's some plist thing that I want to figure out. The fact that I know these words, though, is important. If you don't know what a plist file is, like, that's going to cause you some trouble if you're trying to do things for iOS and macOS and Vision OS. If you're trying to do it purely as, a vibe coding kind of adventure. One thing I'm going to talk about a little bit is local LLM routing. So we are in an AI bubble. I think that's absolutely true. It is going to pop at some point. Right now, we have cheap, ready access to frontier models. I'm going to show you guys a few tabs real quick to come out of here. And this is a fun little thing. I'll actually drop this in the chats for anyone who wants to play it. This is a little introduction to how the Agile Lens fleet is set up, because we're using a lot of different computers with different local models and real world models. You can play with that. I'll do a quick version of it. I'm just going to do a bunch of randomization of things. Oh, it's got music too. I forgot about that. And yeah, pick an industry, blob. And what this is kind of guiding you to do is set up computers that are going to be well tailored to use different kinds of local models. And in some cases, you have to train those local models. So I go connect to the network, and then I have to install, Claude and Node.js and various hooks that are going to help them all talk to each other. Did I do install all? Install all. Go, go, go. And there it goes. Yeah, it's going through and doing all that. And then it's just starting to show that, like, once everything is set up on your network, you're using Tailscale for like local IPs and all that, everything's ready. And then you can start to chain all these different tasks. You can have Linux machines and Mac machines and Windows machines, and they can all talk to each other and grab provisioning profiles. And they become like a proper fleet that works together and delegates tasks in a really smart way. Then we have our knowledge base, which I'll talk more about in a second. And you can send messages to each other. They can all talk and have little inboxes. And you drop tasks in there, and they will, on a trigger, pull things from GitHub, do whatever they need to in order to be useful for your various fleet operations. And down here, I've got fun things like, install Unreal Engine 5.7 and, do some tests on Gemma 4 and all that. And it's all very gamified. This all came out of me, like, trying to get a few companies set up with this Claude fleet system. And I thought this would be a good little gamified introduction to understand how to use multiple computers if you have them. We have 7 right now at Agile Lens. And I'll show you a couple of these things real quick. Pop out a fleet commander. So this is what the control center looks like right now. And I can talk to, various computers at Agile Lens. There's some to-dos. I can dispatch some different tasks. And then I have this amazing second brain. And what the second brain is it gives me a little bit of a visual look at all these different things that we've learned from Agile Lens over time. Relationship with the 4 seasons, Lake Austin. And, I can click on any of these. And let's see what this one is. Scraping event photos, Unreal NYC. So great. So I can click on Unreal NYC, and all of this is markdown files. All this is very readable. It's GitHub repos. every computer on the Agile Lens fleet can read them, and it knows this information. And then there's routing rules for Claude, again, could be Codex or anything else, that then is able to go through and understand exactly what information or techniques or whatever else the case may be if we're trying to complete a very particular tasks. There's workflows and all sorts of things in here under like our intelligence parameter to make sure that we don't hit the same wall or reinvent the wheel. This is the right way to package a test flight app file from a Windows computer with our particular setup. Similarly, going back to the local model thing, I have a very eclectic hardware at Agile Lens. Some of it's very old, some of it's newer, some of it has a good CPU but a bad GPU. And so I've had almost 8,500 runs now of testing different local models. And by the way, for those who don't know what a local model is, it's like Claude or like Codex. You know, it's a AI that you can talk to, an LLM, a large language model, but it can run locally on your computer, totally for free. And so what I was getting to by saying we're in a bubble and it's going to pop and AI is very expensive is that when it does pop and you can no longer get a Claude Pro Max plan for $200 a month, it would be good if you've got some well-trained local models that can still complete a lot of the tasks that you want to do. And so I've had these kinds of overnight tests that my local models have done, and they're judged by Claude. Claude will use Opus or Sonnet to like grade them and leave some notes for them. And so, you know, if I look at just things that are like code gen related, you know, we've got like a snake game that it made and restart game. And so it'll make these different things with the local models, and then Claude will kind of grade them and give them a score and then improve the prompt or, you know, swap out different local models. And what we're getting to with all this is making sure that all the local models are very smart at particular kinds of tasks and efficient and aren't too large. If you're curious by what the B stands for when you see something in a local model, that stands for billion. That's how many parameters there are. So this is Opus with 31 billion parameters. And yeah, it's just really handy to have that kind of information. If I scroll down enough, you can also see like horrifying video tests I did of myself with local models. Nope, we're not going to get that far down. That's fine. We looked at that. We looked at that control center. Yeah, so that's really all I'm getting to, talking about local models and the benefit of that. Oh, you know what I should have done during that is given this a refresh, because I think Claude just finished pushing the final version of the presentation, but I'm not sure. Okay. So yeah, how we route, basically, you know, start off with Sonnet. You can always go to something higher like Opus if you need it, if Sonnet's failing. I think Opus costs 5 times as much as Sonnet. And then it's all set up so that if it can use a local model, if it can use our Gemini API, which is free for a certain amount, by all means, go ahead. I tried to actually bring in the free version of Codex just the other night because I wanted to do a comparison. And it was like, yeah, Codex is like, I can see your whole second brain, your whole knowledge base. I can do all sorts of helpful things. And after like 30 minutes, it was like, you're out of tokens. Please upgrade or, you know, try again in a month. And I was like, okay, no Codex for me then. That's fine. Fleet first routing. Yes. And so the idea, to use a nice little diagram here, I keep saying these things are generated by Claude. A good chunk of this presentation is actually generated by the local models. It's orchestrated by Claude. Claude is telling all the little local models across the Agile Lens network, hey, go make this diagram, make this animation, check the text here, make sure we're not mentioning a client's name in this. And then it all comes back to Claude, and Claude just kind of makes sure that everything is, above board, as you might say. And so the idea here of this lovely little diagram is that we're just trying to use Claude when we need to. And yeah, because we're assuming at some point, every time we want to do anything with Claude, it's going to cost $500. And so we want to reserve that for the things that like we absolutely need it for, and do as much as we can with our local fleet. More diagrams. Oh yeah, and then this is about how another goal is to not use AI when we don't have to at all. Like even forget about local models. I've got, some of you saw that I've released this plugin called Blueprint Auto Layout, which despaghettifies Blueprint and makes it look really pretty and nice. Like the final version of that has no AI. It was built with AI, and now you don't need an LLM in order to use it. It just has very clean code and parameters that say, if the blueprint node is like this, do this, et cetera, et cetera. If we have time, I see we're supposed to be done with this in 7 minutes. No way. I'll give you guys the link for anyone who actually has to bounce in 7 minutes, but we're like 10% through this presentation. Forage is something I've been building to enhance Fab. I think Fab has been kind of lacking on Epic's site, and Forage is also being built with the help of AI, but it's going to be a thing that does not require AI at all. It's intended to like go through your Fab library and help you find like, I really need a robot model and I can't find what's free and what I already have, and like, let's get that into my project as quick and easily as possible. Unreality Kit is a plugin being built to transfer anything from Unreal Engine over into Xcode, and to make it just native reality kit like what Unity has with Polyspatial. And again, AI can help with it. It's being used to build it now, but the goal is something where it's just a send to Xcode button and you don't need to do anything else with it. This is kind of redundant. Yeah, MCP, how we set things up, how it all talks. Let's keep moving along. Okay, so Unreal Engine, MCP, making choices with AI to help select things. Very exciting, very new to be able to be like, hey, Claude, let's build this bedroom and have, you know, a few options for a nightstand and drop this here and drop this here. And I find it funny that everyone's acting like this is something that hasn't been around since the answer being 2018. There's been a version of this, not technically MCP, but similar ideas going back to 2018 with a company called Promethean AI. I got to hang out with Andrew and a few of the other folks from this at Total Chaos in Sofia, Bulgaria in 2019. And we had a great discussion about like what the future of using AI as part of a workflow might be. And, you know, a lot of it was about like, it's going to be useful to help you decide based on choices in your own taste. So like in this case with Promethean AI, it was like the AI would show you to be like, hey, I want to build a kid's bedroom. You know, what assets do I have? What materials can we make? And it's a lot of like giving you a few choices and helping you select one. So that idea has been around for a while. What's new in 5.8 is it's the first time Epic has kind of made a like first party, like here is our official MCP tool, which by the way, to me so far in my limited experiments, it's kind of limited. It feels maybe a little too sandboxed. I know they're giving us tools to like build it out, but there's a lot of MCP tools out there built by a lot of folks. A lot of them are open source. You can extend them and fork them and do whatever you want with them. And at least, you know, a lot of people are asking me like, are you really excited about AI's official 5.8 MCP tool? Not yet, because it's not doing a lot of the things that I get from other tools out there. And again, I can do a ton of stuff headlessly, but like, you know, I love NeoStack's agent integration kit. We've also got a nice set of comparisons over on, what's that website called? ue-mcp.com/compare that compares and contrasts just a few of the MCP tools out there. So if there's particular workflows that you know you're using for Unreal Engine, that's a really valuable resource. I'll drop that, you know, and while we're getting close to the top of the hour, let me also just give you all the link to this deck. Something fun about Spatial Deck, by the way, is I've got all these little parameters. So if I want to see like my slide notes, which I haven't been looking at all, I can just kind of pull it up with the N key. If you were to do, I'll do this real quick, then we'll go back to slide 22. If I were to go into edit mode, and go back to slide 0, there's all sorts of like different presentation settings. It tells me a bit about the snapshot. I could actually be editing the text or moving things around directly in here and then save it back to my, you know, GitHub repo thing. I find it to be a very fun way to make a presentation. If any of you decide at any point that you want to try using Spatial Deck for a presentation you're making, you know, I'm still calling this version 0.05, but let me know how it goes for you and if there's anything I could do to make it more convenient. Okay. Back to slide 22 and slide 23. And so, you know, this is the kind of thing that I see a lot of people doing with their like little MCP tests. And it's like, cool, you can spawn cubes, you can make materials, you can do lighting. As I already mentioned, this stuff is most useful to me when I already have an existing project and I'm trying to refine it, edit it, optimize it, solve a particular crash. That is most of how I'm using AI, especially in Unreal Engine. But it is cool to know that if you just need to like run a quick test of something, or you're doing an apples to apples comparison between Unreal Engine 5.7, 5.8, etc., there's tools out there. That's another big limitation, by the way, of the 5.8 MCP tool, is the fact that it is only in 5.8, whereas a lot of the other MCP tools can go back to much earlier versions of Unreal. Forge, I'll just bring up briefly in here, and there's a thing on my website about it. It is, again, just this plugin to kind of help you with Fab, use your Fab library, rather than just spawning cubes and particle effects and working from an empty scene. It's like if you are going to use an MCP and you want to dig into the assets that you might already own, I believe I currently have, let's see, if I go to my little Forge plugin here, my library at the moment. Oh, no, it's down. Never mind. I was going to say my library, I think, has 950 different assets or something in Fab. So even I don't know all the things that are there. And the goal of this plugin is to like give you more knowledge and access to the things you have and use some tools to better understand what's in your library and use them as needed. So at alexcoulompresents.com, you can sign up if you want more information about that. But again, the goal for that is to make it so that AI isn't needed once you get to the end of that. Here's a little quick tip about, how you deal with things breaking or not. I'll run through some of these things a little bit faster, a little bit more about some of the Unreal MCP tools out there. Quick case study. The first time I was able to use Claude in a really meaningful way for a client project, not a little tech demo, a little test just to say like, hey, I wonder if I can make spinning cubes in the air with fog, which, by the way, yes, you can. This was a project where we needed to deal with metahumans, and there was a celebrity involved. A metahuman needed to look just like them. We needed to get everything to run really well on basically like Steam Deck level hardware. And we realized there were a ton of blend shapes that weren't available. And this is one of the first times where Claude was like, oh, hey, yeah, you're using Ready Player Me avatars. You've got metahumans. We need to get some blend shapes in there. And Claude was like, what's really good for this is Blender. And I said, oh, really? Blender? Okay. Tell me more. And I was like, do I need to, install it? What do I need to do? Like I opened Blender and I'm like, okay, where do I go? And Claude was like, I can do all this through Python. Like, just give me an example of one character that has all the right blend shapes. I can put those on all the metahumans, all the other Ready Player Me characters. And it went through like 40 characters and did all that, then imported them all back to in Unreal. And then I'd open up the metahuman or the skeletal mesh editor and say like, oh my God, there's all the blend shapes I needed. This was also a project where we were able to do a lot of optimization very quickly because of the fact that Claude was able to find all these weird little CVARs and ways that we could change things. So it's like the face is going to animate at a lower frame rate if the camera's not quite looking at it or it's far away, and all these like other kinds of LOD systems that I wasn't even aware of. This project was also using Perforce, which for a number of reasons I still hate. I've tried to love Perforce over the years. I can't do it. We still mostly use Gitted Agilens. We're going to start using Lore. Lore looks exciting, but I loved the fact that Claude could handle all the dumb things that I hate about Perforce for me. So my fear of like doing a commit and having a weird merge conflict and not knowing to resolve it, all that was able to evaporate because Claude would handle all of that and even give very nice little commit messages for when we change something. So that's quite nice. Just another little emphasis there that you don't always need an MCP. During a lot of these optimizations and tests, I didn't have Unreal open. I didn't have Blender open. It was able to just do a lot of these things faster even without Unreal Engine open. And then I'd open Unreal and it's like, Christmas morning. Here's all the stuff that I needed there. Thanks, Pia. Thanks, and everyone else who has to go now. I'm going to try to whiz through these kind of quick. But again, if you think that you might be interested in diving deeper into any of these topics that I'm flying by, alexcoulompresents.com/training. There's a little sign up thing down at the bottom there, and I'm happy to let you know when there are more courses or content available for these things that we're flying through. Thank you, Ed. And by the way, Laura, there's so many wonderful people in the chat. Laura's being such a great, doing such a great job with my links in here. But it's so great to see everyone here, and I'm really grateful for all of the wonderful dialogue going on in the chat and everything everyone is talking about. Many metahumans, tiny hardware, and yes, even someone like me who's been using a ton of Unreal Engine things and metahuman things and like been in the weeds of all this for years, I still learn things from this Claude workflow. But you have to pay attention when you hit a roadblock and you're asking Claude to help you. See what Claude is doing and ingest that into your own first brain, not just the second brain, and you'll be a healthier, better designer, creator, coder, etc. for it. This real quick, by the way, came from tests I was doing trying to bring metahumans over to Godot, and a lot of that just became easier with Unreal Engine releasing the metahuman dev kit. Yeah, you see we're on chapter 6 of 11, but I'll fly through this a little bit faster. Blender has had an MCP service for a while. This is one that has worked well for me. You can still do a lot of things headlessly. Here's a little diagram of some of the ways it works. Python is great. Python also great in Unreal Engine. There's a lot of amazing things you can do with Python. One of the downsides of Unreal Engine compared to some of these other tools is things like .uasset files, .umap files. That's a little bit inscrutable. There's some good like Rosetta Stone things out there that kind of help to learn what those are to still do some things headlessly. But Godot, Blender, a lot of these open source tools, it's all just text. It's very readable by an AI without even needing to open anything. And that's why, especially when the code base is much smaller, a lot of these other tools that are smaller and open source and text readable are in many cases a better tool to use than Unreal Engine and much faster to iterate on. I can compile a fresh source fork of I was gonna say Blender too, but Godot on my little MacBook from 2021 in about 10 minutes. Unreal Engine takes about an hour, and there's just way more code and context for an LLM to try to ingest there. So definitely recommend playing with that. Yes, some of the places AI can save a lot of time in Blender, geometry nodes, materials, any kind of batch operation, anything with rigging. I've been so impressed. I'm not a good rigger. I've tried. I've been so impressed with the number of times I've been able to send something from Unreal to Blender and get it to rig something even that isn't quite human, more quadruped, or like it's got wings, and it comes back into Unreal and it looks good. Love that. And yes, just to mention briefly, if it wasn't implied already, you don't need deep pockets. Frontier models, kind of expensive now, going to be a lot more expensive soon. Local models, once you have them downloaded, once they're trained, very effective, and there's more and more open source models becoming available every day. There's a ton of variations you can find on like Hugging Face that are already kind of optimized to do certain kinds of things, and you just pair that with good prompt instructions, good guardrails. I think it's what's the term? Not typology, but you put them into like very clear lanes of here's the thing that they should do, and then you don't use that model for anything except that, and you're in a good place. One example I like to think about is, for anyone who's familiar with Jason Bourne, is like, and I came up with this, not Claude. If Jason Bourne woke up and has amnesia and has no idea who he is or what he's doing and is looking for instructions from you, if you say, okay, Jason Bourne, I need you to do my taxes, you're going to think Jason Bourne sucks because he's not going to be very good at doing your taxes. But if you go him to go out and like steal something or murder 1,000 people, he's going to be much better at that. So like you want your different LLMs, particularly the local ones, to be optimized for their particular tasks and lanes that are best for them. This was a quick test I did with Blender just to see like, neonscape, blah, blah, blah. How quickly can you do it? Can we do it with a local model? And it was the kind of thing that did not work as well a couple months ago. Now, because of the different prompt engineering and whatnot that's in there and in the second brain, I can do a lot more with local models now with Blender than I was able to do before. Fun. And then, yes, the idea is that you always have like an upgrade path. If you're hitting a wall, my general rule of thumb is like, if a local model or Sonnet or anything else hits a wall twice, then I go to the next best model if I have time. Yes, there's times when it's kind of an emergency and I'm just like, Opus, or like, hey, we're coming up on our reset for the week. We still have a ton of tokens. Like, yeah, sure, fine, let's do Opus, and it might be faster and give me more surprises what it can do. Every model has its own personality, its own little quirks, different things it excels at, is faster at, takes longer at, and it's good to kind of use that whole cast of characters. If we think of this all as a lovely play, life's a stage, or what's the Shakespeare quote? Yeah, all of us are merely players, something like that. I should know my Shakespeare. My wife would be very embarrassed. She has a good portion of Shakespeare memorized, and I do not. Here's what's important, though. Inspect the result. One thing that can be dangerous if you leave something running overnight is you wake up in the morning and everything is just a mess and you're not even sure where to start. And so, yes, you want to give some kind of checking thing if you do a loop. So a loop is where it'll kind of give the same prompt over and over. And you say, like, look at this list and check the next thing off of it and inspect it and decide if it's good or not and move on. If you do that in a way where the check does not involve like a screenshot and looking at the screenshot and confirming that a thing looks the way it needs to, and you're not giving a clear rubric for success, you're just like, make app good. good is a very relative term. And so giving clear instructions for what that metric for success is really, really key. That's how you're going to be able to leave something alone and do something headlessly for, hours and hours and come up with a good result, is if you've already done that enough times, either yourself without any AI or in a more careful way where you're inspecting it as you go, to build a pipeline that then is more set up to do something in an automated way, where you get to that point where, like me, you can get a fresh app that's actually pretty darn good and useful just overnight. Godot, yes, Godot is great. I'm using Godot more and more for things I thought I needed Unreal for. It started with the fact that Apple Vision Pro support was already way better in Godot than Unreal Engine. And what I found was, because Claude and my tools had already built so many things that were specific to Unreal Engine, a lot of that transferred almost one-to-one to Godot. The way I would talk about, post-processing volumes or certain kinds of materials or certain kinds of effects, or how we do certain kinds of OpenXR interactions, that was coming pretty much one-to-one over into what I was trying to do with Godot. And then it went back the other way too, as I started to try to improve the source version of Unreal to make it better for Vision Pro. I was able to pull ideas and concepts and maybe code, depending on how Claude interpreted some of that, to make Unreal Engine work better with Vision Pro, because they're both using the Metal Compositor. There's a lot going on that they actually have in common. Some of the experiments I've been doing with Godot that have started with, like, here's a thing that has worked well in VR for Unreal. Can we do the same thing in Godot? Has led to some very interesting surprises. Quick example here, this kind of blurring effect that you might be seeing a little bit of. You don't use lens effects in VR. They can be they make you feel nauseous. They can make you feel like you're having a stroke or just very lightheaded. And in this particular Godot scene, because it was creating this lens effect in a way totally different from Unreal, I was trying to do something similar to how Unreal does it. And the result in Godot was different, but it actually feels okay because it's separating, it's doing the lens effect in a different way from how Unreal would do it. And it feels like this other object, almost like a fog. And it's a fascinating effect that I want to do more things with. And it came from asking Godot to do something similarly to how I had done that thing in Unreal. So that's kind of a fun little quirk of starting to move between these different tools and pipelines. Ultimately, I was able to get a MetaHuman in Godot that I was very happy with. I tinkered with the lighting quite a bit. This, again, was before there'd been an official release of this MetaHuman dev kit. So this was doing things like exporting from Unreal, going to Blender, adding all these blend shapes, because MetaHumans don't export with blend shapes at all. Now there's other ways around that, but I was able to retarget animations, get some Mixamo stuff in there, do a lot with the face. All of that can be downloaded, by the way. You'll see links to all this stuff. And then, because Apple Vision Pro has the wonderful simulator, pardon me, I need a little water. Apple Vision Pro is this wonderful simulator you can use. I needed to find a way to also create ways to do more with the simulator that would typically require hand gestures. And so I ended up creating a method for actually allowing you to just use a webcam and hand tracking and head tracking to actually just do these things much quicker there. The next step, which I haven't gotten to yet, is getting Xcode, I guess, but by ways of things like Claude and local LLMs to simulate doing those same things, where it's like creating certain kinds of gestures and hand movements, just to allow more testing in a simulator without needing me to actually put on something like a Vision Pro. I wish the MetaQuest simulator was as robust as the Vision OS one, but I also can't keep a Vision Pro awake to do a lot of the things that I can do with a MetaQuest plugged into a computer. I could talk for hours just about the VR side of all this and how Quest and Vision Pro and Android and Vision OS and Unreal Engine and Reality Kit and all these different things compare. That can definitely be its own course. So, there's a few different options for Godot with MCPs. I mostly have not needed to use it at all. I don't think I've installed a Godot MCP yet, but wanted to have some options here if it's useful to you. Just about everything I wanted to do with Godot, I've been able to do totally headlessly. One thing I do quite a bit, actually, we're going to have a slide about this in a moment, so I'll save what I was about to say. But yeah, we never needed a plugin for Godot for a lot of things we were doing. It's human readable text. Unreal Fluency, already mentioned this, that it really helped me to be able to move between Unreal and Godot because of the things I already knew. Super fun. Very briefly, some of the Apple stuff. Yeah, we love the simulator. It's a loop machine. It works really well that you can just keep putting things into the Vision OS simulator, and it can do a screenshot or a video and interpret what it sees and then make adjustments based on that. If someone asked me a year ago if I thought VR was going to be aided a lot by AI, I would have said no, because there's so many things about being in VR that just require that human scale experience, and I was completely wrong. AI is very, very good at these things and is able to solve a lot of problems at my request. This is actually showing a little bit of the dev kit version of what you get from MetaHumans now at metahuman.com/devkit, I believe. And yeah, now you can actually use this whole open rig logic system, and there's a fairly clean pipeline, way less complicated than what I was doing originally with Godot, to be able to get MetaHumans to just about anywhere you want, including Reality Kit. And this was one of those things where I used AI to educate me. It was like, I don't want to go read through the GitHub README and all that. It's kind of like, give me a TLDR of like what's exciting about the dev kit. Let's build a couple examples with it. And now, because I'm a visual learner, it's like, I don't just have even diagrams to understand something. I've got an app to help demonstrate some of these things, which is really fun and cool. Grooms and hair, still a bit of a problem. We're working on that. Splats, here's something fun. Vision OS released splat support with Vision OS 27. Funnily enough, just before that, through a lot of different tests, I actually had built much more robust splat support with a much wider range of options and the way and larger levels of detail, millions and millions of points compared to the 200K limit. I think they just upped it a little bit, but there was a 200K limit when splats first came out. And that came from, again, a lot of what could be done in the simulator, things that could be done just by doing quick tests myself. And there's this other slide I really want to get to, so we're hoping to get to it soon, but it's about having mechanisms to test multiple things at a time. So you're maximizing, if you're in headset, if you're at the computer, making sure that you're giving your AI really excellent feedback for what works and what doesn't. Vitrine was this app that I already alluded to, where it's like, Vision OS came out for 27 at WWDC. Cool. A lot of these look great. Hey, Claude, can you build me a Vision OS app tonight to show me what all these new features are? I woke up in the morning and had a thing that could do everything from light spill, which I'm now using in a projector app I'm building, to all sorts of fun things with AI and new things with how reverb, ray traced reverb for audio works, and splats, of course, and cloth physics. And it was just cool to wake up to a demonstration of that. But the second brain is the key part of that. So nice quote that's apocryphal to Abraham Lincoln. Is that the right word? It's not actually Abraham Lincoln, but it says, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Building that second brain is sharpening your axe. It's the thing that is going to make all of your workflows, all of your pipelines far faster, because you're giving your AI everything it needs to route all the gotchas and all the different ways that something could go wrong, and steering it in the right direction to do things efficiently and not reinventing the wheel and not hitting the same wall over and over and over. There's things like Obsidian, which help you with this. For whatever reason, when I started building our second brain, I started with like, let's build something like Obsidian, just in case we, I didn't even know if Obsidian was open source, and like, I wasn't sure if we were going to run into issues with it. So I just told Claude to like take inspiration from it. And we've got a very robust system that's working great now. Real projects, real transfers. What's fun is it's like a virtuous cycle. Is that the word? There's a virtuous cycle where all these projects kind of inform and enhance each other, and a weird groom problem with a MetaHuman here gets helped by like something I already figured out before MetaHuman Dev Kit, and things over in Godot that are, here's how to pinch and dampen as you move something around. We can bring that logic back over to Unreal and start to do something similar in Reality Kit. And now I've got shadow puppets out of nowhere. Like, it's really fun how all these things can start to help and influence each other, again, because it's all there in the second brain. And you can very easily, from any, Claude session by the way, I'm always in Claude, but I'm often telling Claude to route to local LLMs and all that kind of thing. But I'll be there and saying like, okay, let's pull information from, that other project. And it immediately knows how to go find that other project and the techniques that we used for it. Here's another little helpful diagram for it. You're starting a new project, and it's able to go into the second brain and triangulate between other similar projects and figure out what techniques and tools might be useful for that to be faster. And again, it never feels to me like I'm offloading my own brain, it feels like, oh, cool, I'm learning something new. I wouldn't have thought of using, Blender, Godot, whatever for this particular project. Let's give that a try and see how it goes. And I'm trying to always treat this as a mentor in the same way where I'm trying to have it treat me as a mentor. I want to teach it, and then it can teach me. And again, lots of virtuous cycles and happiness as we all become smarter and more efficient and more able to take advantage of the things that we want to do in this world and where we find passion in our daily work. More diagrams about, yes, how project A, it's a certain speed, project B, it's faster. By project C, at that point, you're probably able to actually just automate the entire thing, which is cool. And then some other pro tips. Some of this I think is kind of specific to Claude, but I used to do compaction a lot where you're like, oh, we've got too many tokens, like tighten that up and let's keep going. I find with compaction, things tend to get lost, especially if there's sub-agents running, especially if you're utilizing your local fleet. And so you can tell Claude, hey, we're done with this task, or we've like used up a lot of tokens. Let's start a new chip. New chip means like let's spawn a new session, and then let's log everything we learned. I always end with that, like log everything we learned from the KB for future reference. KB short for knowledge base. So like whatever we learned here, that's all available to future sessions. Now let's start a new chip. And Claude does a really good job of doing a handoff. You see it creates this little handoff markdown file that then can go into a fresh session, and then it's not going to spend too many tokens kind of getting up to speed, and then you're off to the races with more work. That's my personal preference. Other people might swear by compaction, whatever works for you. Here again, virtuous cycle. We're all teaching each other. Fun stuff. Here we go. Here's the thing that I want. This is the slide I've wanted to get to for a little while here. So yes, your time testing something Claude has made is valuable, especially if you're just doing a quick little R&D thing. Like the danger of all these tools is that you actually end up working more because you're more excited about all the things you can do, whereas before you might have been much more, you might have limited much more what you think you can do with the time you have. And now it's like, oh, I can do anything. The sky's the limit. And so next thing you know, you have 30 projects going on. I personally work best with about 3 projects to bounce between. And I've definitely had nights where it's like, I'm about to go to bed. And then it's like, oh, I've got like these 8 Claude sessions running and I want to give each of them something meaningful to do overnight. And before I know it, it's 4 a.m. because by the time I've gotten to the 8th session, the first session is done. And now I need to give it something else. I'm sure some of us have also been there as well. Yes. And then suddenly you haven't slept at all, but you've made some cool things, maybe half of which are actually directly beneficial to your work and your profession. The other half were just like, I just wanted to see if I could get a Vitruvian digital human working. And the answer was no. The answer was I couldn't. And I spent way too much time on that. But point being of this slide, if you are inside a headset, inside Unreal Engine, inside anything, and you're trying to solve a problem, I'll give you a very specific example. I wanted to get good mesh hands working in Apple Vision Pro for Unreal Engine so I could do some cool OpenXR hand tracking stuff. And the first few tries on my own, everything was like distorted and twisted and the rotation was wrong. And I tried to do a few corrections to that. I kind of felt like I was making it worse. I said, hey, Claude, do you have any ideas on this? Claude made it worse. And so then what I said was like, okay, well, I think we've narrowed it down and we know it's some problem with bone rotation and how OpenXR to Unreal is translating that, because it looked fine over with MetaQuest. And so then what I said was basically like, let's map a gesture. So like middle finger pinch. Every time I do middle finger pinch, I want to cycle between one of 9 different options for what might be the correct solution here. And what happened in this very specific example was as I'd cycle through and I'd watch my hand distort into 1,000 different grotesque formations, was I came to one where it's like, okay, that's the least grotesque one. And then I give that feedback to Claude and it's like, okay. And so then it does 9 more variations based on the one that looked the least bad. And then 10 minutes later, after a couple fresh builds, I've now got a thing that looks great and is very undistorted and looks like proper hands. And then there's some lesson that Claude learned about like how rotation offsets work in Unreal. I maybe remember that, maybe don't. It gets logged to our knowledge base. It's there as a markdown file. I can look it up if I need to. We've got semantic search and I can be like rotation in Unreal OpenXR, and I can pull that information up pretty quickly. The second brain is useful for humans too, not just AI. And that's great. I've done similar things when running into issues with like, translucency and how that's compositing and weird issues with that. So you try to build in these systems where any problem you're trying to solve that doesn't have an obvious solution, when you're in your device, say like, I want to be able to press spacebar on the keyboard to cycle through the 9 different things that might be the right direction. And then we start to narrow it down and get further and further into the right answer. It's also really helpful to test one thing at a time. It's tempting to be like, let's do 1,000 things at once. For my Unreality Kit bridge that goes from Unreal Engine to Apple Vision Pro, I wanted to have a live link set up because I wanted to be able to be in Unreal Engine, in Apple Vision Pro, and be doing things in the Unreal Engine editor and getting a live link preview of everything happening. And the first few times I tried that, it was just too many brick walls, and everything was broken and it wasn't working, and it wasn't a good place to be like, okay, AI, let's solve this. Too many variables. And so instead, starting with something simple, like let's get transforms correct, let's get materials correct, one by one, let's get the lighting correct, and you're adding in things one at a time, doing these tests, sometimes in the simulator, sometimes in a headset as needed, and you end up with something that is working, and you understand why that worked, and that gets logged to the database, and you move on to the next thing. Sometimes these things can be done headlessly. They can be done in loops. Sometimes it's really useful for you to be there checking it yourself, either because you're going to give better feedback or because it's something that you kind of need to fundamentally understand to do your job well. We use lots of different models and machines. They all share the same second brain, so it all works. When I used Codex for 30 minutes, Codex looked at our second brain, immediately knew the things I was up to, saw some outstanding tasks, saw the inbox, and I was like, here's how I can be helpful. And then, of course, wasn't, because I was on the free version. But it's cool how well a second brain can be helpful. Mentioned these things a little bit. I only quickly alluded to Tailscale. Tailscale is a way to put lots of different devices on the same local network, like a VPN. And what that allows for is this lovely SSH tunneling. So you can do things like, package a iOS file from I keep wanting to say Mac, Windows. You can do things like transfer files between each other. You can leave messages for each other. You can open an Unreal Engine project on a different computer and run a headless test or run an MCP test. All of these, when they're connected through something like Tailscale, it's basically one big cluster of almost like one computer, like a hive mind thing, all working together. And that's cool. A recent thing I just added, though, because I've always have too many sessions going at once, and this is in Claude Fleet, which you guys, again, can use as much as you like on your own for your own purposes, is I now always have a markdown file that's kind of like the active things being done right now. Because if you've got something like Unreal Engine, where if you're in 5.7, it can only compile to one thing at a time. You can't I think that's true for Xcode also. You can't be compiling 5 Unreal Engine 5.7 projects at the same time. So if I've got a few sessions that are all trying to use Unreal Engine 5.7, they're going to start to interfere with each other. So a simple little solution was just having almost like a notice board where all the different sessions across our entire fleet are saying, hey, I'm using this singleton right now, this thing that nothing else is going to be able to use. I'll be done in about 20 minutes. I try to have sessions log how long it takes to do different things. Check back in a little bit. You can have Unreal Engine next, and they'll all kind of queue up on this little notice board, and it's really handy. Another thing I want to mention is what we might call the sunk cost fallacy. Eventually, you're going to find that there are things that AI is just not good at yet, or you haven't trained your second brain well enough to do yet. As well. And so we were doing a project recently at Agile Lens where we had these scans of trees, bad, gross scans of trees, and we needed to turn them into mega plants and use nanite foliage and have a really robust, very accurate digital twin of a particular environment. And as much as I tried to get Claude to strip away the leaves, look at this PLY file, build a mega plant from that, I had some versions that were okay. This is the bottom right one, the turntable. Eventually, the best way to judge how good it was to tell Claude, give me both objects spinning on a turntable at the same time. That's kind of the best one it was able to do. But when you pay attention to things, June on our team at Unreal Fest noticed there's a new node in 5.8 that actually is build mesh from source kind of thing. And that became a really useful node for actually a more manual process for replicating trees. And you see the PLY files up here in gray, and the custom Agile Lens handcrafted versions of the trees in green. And it's a much better workflow. AI actually ended up not being that useful for it. So, it's okay. You've burned a bunch of tokens, but you learned that this isn't quite ready for prime time. You do it manually, and at a certain point, you can feed that information back to Claude and say, hey, here's how we did this. Now you try to follow this workflow. June made a 10-minute video for us at Agile Lens to walk through her manual process. I can now, when this deadline is over, feed that video back to Claude and be like, what did you learn from this that is maybe an improvement over the workflow that you'd come up with for trying to replicate these trees? Quick shout out to OpenClaw. I often think of OpenClaw right now as in Iron Man, you've got Dummy, who is like the robot who's Tony Stark made when he was in college, like MIT, and he isn't very good at a lot of things. Like when I first opened OpenClaw, and it was like, what should I model myself after? Should I be like Jarvis? And I was like, yeah, be like Jarvis. And I hit so many brick walls trying to use OpenClaw, some of which would be solved now by things like my knowledge base, but now I've had to like really demote OpenClaw to just kind of be like this little Slack bot that occasionally gives us like some fun facts about Unreal Engine and stuff like that. And it's very good at like little internet scrapes, and we still pull it in to be a little bit helpful here and there. But I had maybe 60% reliability using OpenClaw, and I'm at like 95% reliability with our current Claude setup. So it's worth the $200 a month for my company to be able to have much more reliable interactions with AI. And again, building up our local fleet as much as possible to be useful for the future. We don't really have time for a live demo. I'll do a video. I'll make a little video of what the live demo looks like as we just give a little prompt and watch things happen in real time. A little description of how this works. I send a little thing. Blender creates a thing. Godot can create a thing. It's cool, and start to build scenes with little variations in what you ask for lighting and all that. But again, I as a demonstration, it's kind of fun to show going from nothing to something. 90% of what I'm doing is starting with a thing and trying to improve it. As my mic collapses. Okay, we're almost done. Yes, don't do vague prompts. Don't say this looks bad, make it look better. Try to be like very specific, although Claude is getting better, and probably other tools as well, at asking you to clarify as well. Like it'll give you these little multiple choice questions of like, what does better mean to you? And that's helpful. And it's kind of teaching you what's the right way to talk to Claude and to create things like proper loops that are going to give it the right rubric for success. Best automation is the one you'd have done anyway. This is how I remind myself. Again, Claude wrote this language, but this is a good reminder for me of like not just doing tech for tech's sake and R&D for R&D's sake and burning tokens, going down some weird rabbit hole like Vitruvian digital humans. I'll keep coming back to that one. That ultimately isn't actually improving your life or anyone else's in a big way. The best automation is something that you already do. Maybe it's repetitive. It's something that is part of your job. Maybe you don't like it very much. And if you can get an AI, or better yet, just like a script to do it for you, then you're using these tools well. You're making your own life better because then you can focus more on the things that you care about, or you're giving something to the world through an open source GitHub repo that everyone else can use too. So yeah, there's our nice little chapter thing. In previous presentations, this looks much more like the Agile Lens monocle at the end. This is a little bit more of a janky Temu version of it, but that's okay. When you look at the presentation yourself, you'll see these are all hyperlinks, and you can click on the different parts of the deck. And then just to let you know about some of the open source things available for you all, here are 12 projects that might be useful in your day-to-day work, which you are welcome to click on and have some fun with across every different category of things we've talked about. And then just if you're curious to see other talks I've given, especially the ones with Spatial Deck, which tend to be very interactive, we've got my Harvard XR talk, the FMX talk I gave with David Gotchfeld, and the Next Build talk that I gave with June in London just about a month ago. And QR codes in case it's easier to take a picture of your screen because you want to see it on your phone, whatever. And then for some reason, Spatial Deck always ends with like, let's build, which is kind of relevant because of the Sensei hackathon coming up. Do by all means build and try to, I'd say start by building a bit of a second brain. Try to feed in some workflows and tools and automations that are going to be useful. I don't know why Claude decided to add in my little finger puppet thing there at the bottom in Vision Pro, but cool. You can do finger puppets now. It's great. And that's it. We only went for an hour and a half. That's not nearly as bad as I've done in the past when given kind of an open floor to just speak until I'm done speaking. But I'm happy to hang out for another few minutes if anyone has any questions. I can take a look at the Q&A, glance at the chat. Thank you all so much for listening to me fly by this wonderful stream of consciousness of many thoughts across MCP and AI and lots of different tools and ways to use them. Glad to hear this sparked a lot of ideas. Thanks, Brian. Cool. Let's see if there's anything in the Q&A that should be answered live. There are 8 questions. Let me stop sharing my screen.
I can quickly share with you if you want the
Yeah, go
questions.
ahead.
So thank you, by the way. It's amazing. Like it's like it's really Netflix style, you know. So
Yeah,
maybe we can make it
Netflix if you're
publishing.
playing at 2x speed, right?
Exactly, it's a little bit, yeah, but I think it's perfect for people who will watch afterwards. Everyone is
Yeah.
already very happy. So can we use this AI plus MCP in Omniverse USD composers and Isaac Sim from NVIDIA?
Can you use this AI plus MCP in Omniverse? Oh, Omniverse, NVIDIA Omniverse. You know,
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what Omniverse is for, but NVIDIA is so AI forward. I would be blown away if there's not an MCP connection or at least some way to talk to it well. If you Google MCP Omniverse and USD, I think there's probably something there.
Amazing, amazing. So, have you tried with Gemini, anti-gravity, or Kiro?
I'll be honest, I have no idea what Kiro is. Anti-gravity, I installed just enough to be able to connect it to Claude because I think you can't use Gemini as like a direct CLI now. Like you have to go through anti-gravity. I opened up anti-gravity a little bit. I didn't immediately understand what it was going to do for me, but I know a lot of people swear by it. I know Cursor can be great for people as well, especially if you want to be much more directly in front of the code. But yes, all I really installed anti-gravity for was to get the Gemini API to be a thing that Claude could access as another subagent. And by the way, if I didn't mention that, like, yes, you can have like 50 subagents running in the background, all doing different tasks. You can have like Claude Opus or Sonnet. They're kind of at the top, like orchestrating them all and making sure they're all doing well and reviewing the work as it comes back. But you can do tons of things in parallel and having local models to make sure that it's not 50 subagents of Opus or even Sonnet is a really good place to be.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, are you running local models?
How are you running local models?
Yeah,
I'm
how it's
mostly using
working? Yeah.
Olama. In many cases, it's totally, I don't know if headless is the right word. It's through CLI, it's through terminal. I have a digest. Here's another thing I didn't mention. I have a digest that searches Reddit and social media and the news or whatever, and it's always looking for like other things that will be useful for Claude, for my workflow. It knows like the things Agile Lens is working on, so it might be like, oh, here's a new Unreal Engine technique. Here's a new thing for XR, and that all kind of goes into the second brain automatically. And one of the things that pops up quite a bit is, hey, there's a new local model. Some people are saying it's really good for Godot or whatever, and so then that kind of just automatically gets added to the fleet. So what happens at first is we end up with usually a local model installed on 3 or 4 machines out of the 7 connected to the Agile Lens fleet. It's like whichever ones Claude is assuming might work best based on our current knowledge. And then it'll run some apples to apples tests on those local models. And then it will say, okay, your Lenovo computer, that's the one that can really work well with this. It's got an RTX A6000. It's got 48 gigabytes of VRAM. Like, yes, that works great. And yeah, most of it, I don't even see it. Like it's there in RAM and VRAM. It's downloaded in the background. But I do almost no manual work. I have not downloaded a local model myself. It's all been Claude saying like, hey, and there's a new cool variant from Hugging Face for Gemma. Should we grab this one and test it? And I say, yes, Claude, go with God. And then I get results back for like if it worked well and if we should keep using it. And we're constantly deleting local models too. Like we've probably done 50 that just ultimately weren't doing anything useful for us. And so some of them can be pretty big. So you just delete them off the computer when they aren't being useful.
So curated selection. Yeah, I could
Curated.
imagine.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Dave, for this question. And there is also 2 more questions. It's on the chat. Please try to submit into the Q&A tab so it is easier. Michael is asking, how are you training these questions, these models, or are you just wrapping them in skills? And Vega asks, are you using a specific harness to interact with your local models or smaller agentic frameworks such as A2G?
I don't know what A2G is, but it's all running through Claude right now. Like Claude is my point of contact for everything, and Claude orchestrates all these different tests we do. The tests are things like I showed very briefly earlier on in the presentation, like make a snake game, make a wiki, do this in Unreal. Like it's very discrete tasks, and it always involves either like an interactive thing that is something done by the end, or it's like a screenshot or a video, and then Claude analyzes that. And I did need to talk to Claude about like what our judging criteria should be for what's good. It ranks everything on a score from 1 to 10, and then that helps us narrow down which models are best for which particular tasks. And then that means that with our, our routing markdown file, when I say, hey Claude, I want to do a new thing with my projection mapping app, let's add this and this and this feature, it's able to look at the things that my local models are good at and then decide, yes, we can do that with Gemma 4B or whatever, and kind of go off to the races. And sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it comes back and it's like, nope, that local model really failed at this. But rather than that just being a brick wall, it says, okay, I'm going to take care of this right now, Opus or Sonnet, it'll do it. The task gets done. And then it always goes back and is like, okay, Gemma, like, why did I think you were going to be good at this and you weren't? And then it sets up additional prompting and training to either decide that like, actually, it's not good at that, or there was a mistake in how we were trying to use it. And that was a mistake on something I said or something Claude said when delegating to it as a subagent.
Very nice, very nice. Michael was also referring to his question about it's about like he means the grabbing from Hugging Face. So, and Edward is saying that Claude is always telling me how I should use Claude more when the models fail, right?
Yeah, you don't have to. I do wonder, there's always that suspicion of like, does Claude, because I find sometimes too that Claude is like, it's okay, I'll just do it. And I'll be like, no, like use our routing table, like use the local models. And I can't tell if it's Claude just being really eager to do a good job and show you how good of a job it can do, or if there's something on the back end where Anthropic's like, use all the tokens, like, more money, which doesn't really make a ton of sense though, because we are just paying a flat $200 per month. We never go over our usage or anything. So yeah, I wonder about that. I do find I do need to remind sometimes. Two things I do all the time because for whatever reason it doesn't seem to be as embedded into the workflow as I'd like. I always end a session with log this to the knowledge base so we have everything for future reference. Spawn a new chip. Sometimes it forgets to do that or it just doesn't do a very thorough job logging the lesson. So that's a good reminder. And I often will start a session with like, don't forget to use our routing table to use local models and all that. Because a lot of times, yes, like the markdown file is there and it will sometimes ignore it or not see it. And so it's good to kind of poke Claude to be like, hey, don't just do all this with Opus. Like I'll usually have Opus as the orchestrator for any task that isn't super straightforward and needs some kind of decision making. But I often do need to tell it, like, make sure you are delegating as much as possible to our much cheaper options. And that's how we stay under our usage limit.
Yeah. I know that you are not being programmed for this, but try to use as many local models as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, is that depth effect using eye tracking to make things you aren't focusing on, looking at out of focus? Scott asked.
Yeah, so this is about the Godot thing. So I think I figured out with some help from Claude what was going on there. And there's a third person character in the scene, and the third person character has its own lens effect that's happening for depth of field. Now in Unreal Engine, that wouldn't affect anything else at all. But for some reason in Godot, I'm seeing the depth effect from the third person character over in my VR model. And so all that's happening, and I can like scroll up and down with the mouse wheel to change where it's happening. It has nothing to do with me at all. It has to do with what direction the third person character is looking and then where the depth of field is set for that third person character. It's kind of a byproduct right now, but it's such a cool effect. Like I want people to see what it feels like in VR that I want to make it into something that's like much more intentional and is programmed into some kind of game or experience, because it also just does cool things with like how it draws your attention to certain things. And like in architecture, we spend a lot of times in VR trying to not get people to focus on the wrong part of the design. Like here, we're talking about acoustic panels today. Everyone just look at the acoustic panels, and then someone's like, well, the railing right now, this isn't really how we want the railing. And it's like, we're not talking about the railing today. But when you're in VR, it's so easy to just feel like you're in a place and everything feels like fair game. And the ability to actually like not just fog, but like actually blur out the things that are not as important is actually kind of a superpower. And I really want to start to use that more.
Amazing, amazing. After you get the taste of these superpowers, there's nothing to stop us, like that's how we are imagining. I love this projection mapping project. I'm a big fan of that. So perfect. We answered Scott's question, and next one is Rovida is asking how to use AI MCP in Unity Unreal to build certain things and learn from it at the same time. For example, if you wanted to make an animation or integrate hands in a VR scene, how to learn from it as if it's a real person who knows what they are doing and is sitting next to me working on the computer, and I'm watching and learning from them.
I want to make sure I understood the question, but I see it now. How do you say it? Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely a situation where you don't want to be headless. You want to actually have the editor open. And it's good to, rather than say like, make me a cinematic animation with a Dutch camera angle with this particular lighting, it's better to do that much more modularly, where if you're like, I don't know how to create a keyframe in the Unreal Engine sequencer for a material parameter collection or something like that. Like you might just start step by step by being like, hey, Claude, whatever. Hey, local model. Hey, Claude, tell the local model to make a keyframe for my material parameter collection to bring the opacity down over 5 seconds. And you're not necessarily going to know exactly the right places to click, but you'd at least see that getting created in the sequencer, and that would help. If you do want to see everything getting clicked, this is a more expensive token option. But one of the things I was doing with OpenClaw back in February was pixel streaming. So with pixel streaming, you can use Claude or OpenClaw's browser extension to directly interact with Unreal Engine with a cursor. And so if you really want someone, if you want it teaching you how to do something, this will actually show you it clicking on each individual thing. It's very slow and burns a lot of tokens, but it does work. Similarly, Claude has options for like computer control. And so that's no MCP or anything like that. It's like literally taking over your mouse and interacting with the scene directly. I do the pixel streaming option more if I'm working from a computer elsewhere, because pixel streaming very easily can go from any computer to, wherever you are now.
Maybe Alex, this is very interesting because we may have some kind of like a menu, like for different workflows, and these like different specific agentic usage. How much credits it took for each? If we can give us some kind of like a table about that, it will at least make people's wallet ready before they start their project. So it might be also interesting to see how much credits, or like are you preferring to use local so it's much more cost efficient. So I think people are really needing that right now.
Yeah.
For someone staging scenes in 3D for use with animation, do you feel Unreal Engine or Blender is a better software? I have logged very few hours in Unreal Engine and zero in Blender. Do you feel an MCP for either is better for a beginner? Coming from Max Einhorn, I think this is very interesting, Alex. The blur between these 3D tools. One of them is, of course, a powerful game engine versus 3D design tool. So how you are imagining, like for a person who doesn't know anything about game engines, right? Like a model or a modeler or artist or animator. So how you are imagining that? Should they start also exploring game engine, the AI powered game engine capabilities, or should they stick to their existing tool and then try to make this as a game engine with the help of AI? Is a
Yeah.
philosophical question I'm asking now.
Yeah, and a lot of the question also comes down to like how much do you want to feel the satisfaction of being hands-on and doing this yourself? If you're someone who enjoys the idea of like rigging and like really getting exactly the right movement of a skeletal mesh correct, I love the tools that Unreal Engine has with Control Rig and some of the things available, and they're constantly releasing new rigging pipelines. Blender is an incredibly robust set of tools for all of this. I think you could go in either direction. If you're looking for more automation, I would definitely lean toward Blender. Blender is much faster, much more automated. It's open source. You can fork, or if it's kind of open source, you can fork a version of Blender that's like much more dedicated for your particular animation pipeline as needed. And the code base is so much smaller. And so you can do so much more with that specific to your needs compared to Unreal, which is not open source and is a much huger code base and more difficult to work with from a few different perspectives. So yeah, the short version is if you like being really hands-on with the tools, keep using Unreal. If you're looking for something more automated that uses fewer tokens and brings AI into the loop in a really compelling way, I would definitely lean toward Blender there.
Perfect, perfect. By the way, next week we will probably have a few more VFX Unreal type of use cases coming from our other partners as well. Some of them uh, do not use any kind of game engines, but they are very nicely part of a very seamless workflow, bringing a studio quality output there. So I think that's also a nice opportunity, especially with 3D Gaussian splats. There are so many workflows even happening on web. So Ibrahim is asking, it's a work-related cybersecurity thing. Does the whole thing you talked about can work without being linked to the internet or living in intranet? I think this is also a little bit related with the local model question. How do you imagine that? Because some studios have very restrictions on like not to use their IP either for feeding or output, right? So how you are imagining this reliability?
Yeah, yeah. So I've never worked in like a proper corporate environment with like a lot of very specific rules around IT. Agile Lens is a relatively small company, and so we can kind of do the things that make the most sense to us. But local models, I mean, yeah, there's tremendous value in the fact that you don't need the internet at all. It can all be totally offline. And then, sometimes your internet goes out and then you're like, I was in the middle of a thing and I wanted to keep going. That's a situation where I can't keep using Claude because for Claude to activate at all, it needs to be connected to the internet. But there are a few instances where like, yeah, that's where I might switch over to something like maybe anti-gravity or just simple terminal CLI stuff where you can access through something like Olama, these local models more directly. Yeah, but again, something like with what I do with Tailscale, like that's similar to a lot of company infranets in local internets where like everything's very restricted and locked down. Maybe you need to open like just certain ports. Maybe all that network traffic is monitored. But I'd like to imagine that even in more restrictive IT environments, there'd still be a way to have a pretty robust fleet workflow. Yeah, and AI on a plane. Yeah, thanks, Ed. Absolutely, I've done that a
Exactly.
couple times. It's been very
Yeah,
fun to see like, yeah, what can I do without having any internet for the next 5 hours?
you shared a few things as far as I remember about like how you use without. So it's amazing. So there's one more question. How are you deleting while using an agent? I've had trouble subtracting code using LLMs.
Deleting, that's interesting. I mean, the only reason I think that could be an issue is if something's currently active, like Unreal Engine, for example, like it's tough to do anything at the file explorer level, like while Unreal Engine's open. In general, you don't want to be doing anything with Unreal Engine with the direct like Windows Explorer files. So, in some cases it might be that the AI is trying to stop you from like corrupting code or making a mistake. There's also like the source control side of it. Like if something's in the middle of a push, if it's stashed, if it's on a pull request or something like that, sometimes that can stop things from being deleted. But I don't think I've ever really had a major problem like that. In fact, I will often end sessions the same ones where I'm saying like log everything we learned to our KB, to our knowledge base. I'll say like delete everything we don't need anymore, and it's usually worked pretty well. So I'd be curious to know more about what might be causing that issue for you, anonymous attendee.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that. We have a couple of questions left. I know that quite a lot of questions coming up. So let's also ask that as well. So Brian is asking how much programming is done manually to set up an LLM and a second brain.
Really nothing, almost nothing. Like, I'm a coder. Like I do billions of things with blueprints. When I was in Unity, I used to use C# fairly regularly. I've in the 10 years I've used Unreal, I barely use C++. I use it when I need to like compile a plugin to come to a newer version or something like that. Most of what I did to set up the second brain in the LLM was all natural language. Like, hey, I watched a YouTube video and it was about Obsidian and it talked about how useful a second brain is. Can you set that up for me? And then Claude's like, how about something that looks like this? And I say, that's cool. Change the color palette and maybe change this. And like you give natural feedback and you just have that nice loop. But yeah, same thing with the LLMs. It was like, I think when I first did that, I was like, you're probably going to be really expensive soon. Can you help me find some good starter LLMs to download? And Claude was like, oh, yeah, you should have Olama. And I was like, what's Olama? And I said, oh, it's going to be a good way for us to pull local models. Do you want me to download it through terminal right now? And I said, sure. And then we had Olama and then local models downloaded. And Claude said, do you think I should run some tests and see if these particular coding tasks work well, since based on our very small second brain right now, this seems to be the thing you do? And I say, yeah, let's run some tests on that. And said, okay, they all did fine. And I said, what's fine? And it's like, oh, we should probably have a rubric. And then, you keep going further and further into the weeds, but it's not like coding. It's a conversation. Speaking of conversation, I also find it's tremendously helpful to use Claude's remote control mode, which means that you can continue a session like on your phone. So I'll take my dog for a walk and I'm halfway through a session. And then sometimes I'm just talking. I'm using the microphone speech to text stuff and just kind of getting out all my thoughts about when I was testing the app, this part was kind of unintuitive and there's too much friction here. And people are going to think that this icon is actually this icon. And I'm just spewing out thoughts. And then I'm pressing enter and I'm just out with my dog. And then I come back to my, desk 20 minutes later and the app has been rebuilt with new code, taking into account my suggestions. And that's kind of cool that we're at a point where that's possible. But that comes from a robust second brain and understanding. And if you're not much of a coder, one of the best things you can feed your second brain is workflows. Show it templates and forum posts and anything where it looks like someone solved a particularly hard problem, so that anything that helps that second brain not run into brick walls and find the right path to do particular tasks. It doesn't have to be the code that you're doing yourself, and it can be the code someone else did, or just little posts someone made to say, oh yeah, here's a weird gotcha I had. There's lots of ways to get Claude and other LLMs to watch YouTube videos. Start by reading the transcript and then taking a screenshot every few seconds and kind of ingesting that as information as well. A lot of times when I see a video where someone's like, you have to try this amazing new workflow for Claude, I'm not going to click on that and watch it. A lot of it's very clickbaity anyway. Sometimes though, I'll paste it into Claude and be like, anything useful here? And Claude will be like, this is mostly nonsense, but there's one little gem at the 5-minute mark and 20 seconds, and yeah, we should make that part of our workflow. And I say, great. And I didn't have to watch someone, hawk their weird sponsored product.
Amazing, amazing. Did you try Fable when it is available
Yeah.
for a few seconds?
Yeah, so for anyone who checks out the new version of Alex Coulomb Presents, where the first version of it was just Google Sites, and it was very, very simple. This was actually built in that 24 hours that I had access to
Okay,
Fable.
that's nice.
And I didn't release it because I was like, oh my God, Fable made so much here. I still have not seen all the pages on this website yet. And I that was weeks ago, and I was like, I probably shouldn't make this website go live until I at least make sure my social security number isn't somewhere here. And a lot of the text was it read very, very AI. Some of it still does. And so some of what I've been trying to do over the past couple of weeks is just kind of going through the Fable built version of my website based on what Fable was able to deduce from me and our second brain and the things I'm trying to do with training and all that, and just trying to go through and make sure that it was doing the right things. But it's cool that Fable wired up a whole system for me to log people who are interested in certain plugins I'm building, and setting up proper subscriber systems and ways to send me an email, stuff that I did more manually back when I worked on the Agile Lens website. The new Agile Lens website is also very influenced by Claude, and now anyone on my team can be like, oh hey, we're doing a thing for New York Tech Week. Add a thing to the front page of the Agile Lens website to talk about that. And it's cool that none of us actually need to get into the code anymore. It's a GitHub repo, and Claude and Fable and everything else understands it very well and can just make whatever we need it to, pretty much just by us asking it to.
Do you have an Easter egg or something inside the website?
Yeah, at the bottom, you'll notice at the very bottom
Yeah, I
where
saw
it
that.
mentions Fable, it says there's the Konami code, and there is something fun that
Exactly.
happens if you enter
Let's
the
not
Konami
tell
code.
the Easter egg so everyone can check. Let's do our
There's
own
more.
Easter
There's
egg.
more than one Easter egg. That's one of
Okay.
5. So yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Great.
Yeah.
So we have only a few questions left. So I developed a working relationship with ChatGPT, and I am considering Cloud. And would this be a move to a different AI tool or an addition?
My very quick impression, and I used to use ChatGPT. I had my own, various ethical issues, which is a big can of worms about some of what ChatGPT was doing. So I stopped paying for them. I hadn't used Codex at all. I tried it for the first time the other day. It felt very much, especially the desktop app, like Claude to me. It feels like there's a lot of companies right now racing to create exactly the same product. Eventually, probably only one of them is going to win, but there's not a ton of variation in the ultimate capabilities of what these frontier models can do. I think if you want to jump between Claude, Codex, anything else, Gemini's a little harder because some of the ways that Google has set it up. There's plenty of the stolen versions like Minimax and whatnot from China, which are also very similar. There's a lot of ways you can go about this, and I think you're going to be okay with any of them. And to me, that's really the magic of the second brain. Like any LLM, local or otherwise, can read Markdown files. And if there's a little, for me, it's a Claude MD file, but I told Codex, look at the Claude MD file that tells you how to work with a second brain, and it was off and running with it in no time. So, if Anthropic went under tomorrow and died, or it became way too expensive and Codex was still available, or I could only use my local LLMs, I would still feel very capable with what we can do because of how robust our second brain is. And so, yeah, but the number one takeaway I hope you have from this 2 hours of me rambling is like build a good second brain, like get something that knows about you and your workflows and your hopes and dreams and the things you want to do. Don't feed it too much personal information. Like the Agile Lens second brain is all set up in such a way where anyone from Agile Lens can look at it and they're not going to see like weird internet searches for me or anything like that. It's meant to be like pseudo public. So treat it like that. Treat it like something that you are going to share with people. But it can be a really, really robust tool for any AI workflow at all.
One question regarding this maybe security part. Have you encountered any malware or nefarious issues from letting Cloud download all these external tools? If so, how did you clean it up? Did you ever have to do a full scrub and start over? Would this ever be necessary? Just thinking through worst case plus recovery scenario.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm very aware of how just like any arms race and weapons race, like you might have great ideas and very idealistic ways you want to use these tools. There's always going to be bad actors that want to use them in the worst possible way. I've been lucky so far. To my knowledge, nothing bad has happened. I think a lot of this comes from making sure that you are actively checking these things. OpenClaw had a problem for a while with, I think it was called ClawHub, where a lot of the stuff on ClawHub had various like malware and injectors, prompt injectors, things like that. And so at some point, I did actually have even my OpenClaw agent constantly scrubbing and using some other tools to like check for malware, see if there's anything weird, give me reports if there were any strange tool calls, if something tried to access something that was unexpected. I've been okay so far, to my knowledge. Try one thing is like try to gate things where you can, try to sandbox things where you can. It's really tempting to just let Claude go like totally wild on all of your email accounts and all that. Like I try to give it slightly more narrow guardrails for like, I want you to do these things in Unreal Engine. I want you to use this email account. I want you to be able to access this GitHub repo. And it takes a little more time, but that's the kind of thing that just makes me feel like a little more safe about how these tools are able to use all my data. And if I found out tomorrow that Claude became a rogue agent trying to do the worst things it possibly could, let's be clear, like it could wreck me pretty bad, but it wouldn't know my social security number. Like there's little things like that. Like it doesn't know everything. And I think that's the safe way to just keep it like at arm's reach. Treat it like a friend who you like get good vibes from, but you're still just starting to get to know them. And so, you're not 100% sure yet they're not a con man.
Don't keep it so close. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. How many agents are you using now for building your own local LLM? Do you have a number or are you counting that?
Good question, Jerry. And to be clear, like, so we're not really building our own custom LLM, and we could do like our own custom agents. Although, I might not even know like the correct definition of an agent. Like we're using existing models and existing LLMs. And there's maybe 10 that are like in some circulation as local models. And then, if you add in the various Gemini models, Claude, Sonnet, Fable, Haiku, not Fable, Opus, Fable, Haiku. Sorry, I keep saying Fable, Opus, Sonnet, Haiku. There's probably like 15 different agents that are in regular circulation for the tasks. And like I said earlier on, like it feels like a cast of characters. They all have their own little unique personalities and quirks and things that they're good at. Speed is also a big thing too. Like sometimes there's agents that like Opus can do most things very well, but if you crank it up to like max thinking capacity, it's going to take 5 minutes and use 100,000 tokens. Ultra code. If you do ultra code with Opus and you're like, hey, please update this page on my website, it might use 10 million tokens to do a thing that one of your local models could have done for 500 tokens in 3 minutes. And so, that's why a good routing table works. Like ideally, you don't need to think about too many of these decisions, and you've done all the legwork or had your AIs do all the legwork to know who's best at what job, and then they're just going to be assigned to those particular jobs. Attention,
Yeah.
your recording will stop in 2 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. No, no, this is just a note taker. Our
Yeah,
recordings will. We have prepared ourselves for unlimited Alex exposure, so no problem.
unlimited Alex.
But what I was thinking is actually maybe if you have time, or our team can also do, we can do some kind of like a second 3D brain sprints that people can build their own second brain, try to build, and then maybe towards the end we can help them and then maybe get these use cases or like a lessons learned from them. So because you are like OG. Not everyone is like you guys, so that's why we need to make sure that we look at from the person who is just doing first time, right? Maybe the first time brain will not work as good as they expected, but if there is an interest from the chat, we can really do some kind of like a I know like a maybe stream or some kind of like a sprint that at the end of that week that you guys pitch your own second brain, and then we can make it a little bit like a better together or learn from each other. I think that's also a very nice opportunity. It looks like there is quite interest. Since anyone who stayed that long, anyways, for 2 hours, I think there is definitely interest. So, okay, then with Laura and our team, we will think about that, how we can do that. I think at least for today, we come to a point that may be very helpful before the hackathon. I think that's also important for us that people can start building their second brain and make them in action, in words in action hack. So that's actually a nice opportunity. Hopefully that they can also stress test their second brain on at the hack. And there is one last question from Gandepun. Do you use Hermes in your workflow? In what way? Also, do you use containers like Docker, or you completely trust these AI agents?
Yeah, I know I should know what Hermes is. I actually can't recall at the moment. So, no, I did start off using a lot more Docker containers and things like that. And I probably just was having a little bit of trouble with that exact sandbox workflow because I found in so many cases it was just constraining my agents to the point where they just couldn't do the things I needed them to do. I'm sure if I spend a little more time on it, I could have figured out how to do that properly. But I'm not doing a ton with Docker containers now anymore. Maybe not at all. There are some instances where when I'm using like a new piece of software and I want my agent to deal with the software, if that software supports being in a Docker container, I might start with it in there and then be like, okay, see what you can do in here. But like Claude's not in the Docker container, just that other software is. I have no idea if that's like a best practice or anything. But yeah, there's always that little voice in my head that's like, what if this tries to destroy your entire life? And trying to guard against that in at least some small sort of way.
Amazing, amazing. Perfect. I think we finally finished all the questions. So thank you for like all of these. I think open up everything, not your social security number, but almost everything about your 3D workflow. So this is amazing. Thank you for your time, Alex. This is very helpful. Hopefully, we will already go through that. Uh, Amazing. So we will go through that also at the event hackathon at SIGGRAPH. We have tons of sessions waiting for us. So anyone who were considering to join the hack, maybe this is the moment that maybe you can decide and join us, meet with us, have some nice hacking, but also enjoying the conversation. And thank you everyone for all these questions. I think you got a lot of likes. I think if you can share, Alex, maybe you can share your links one more time. Please follow Agile Lens. And Alex tweets and posts are like almost like you are basically he's inviting you to his experimental playground, you know. So you are always getting something from his weekly challenges, let's say. Okay, he already shared. So that's great. So please follow Alex as well. And hopefully next Thursday, this week Thursday, we will have another interesting session and info session for the hackathon. We would like to invite all of you if you are interested on the splats and Gaussian word models, Gaussian splats. And next week we will continue with other sessions. So Alex, anything you'd like to add before we conclude today?
I just want to give like some kind of prize to everyone who thought they were coming to a 1 hour talk and ended up staying for more than 2 hours. I don't know what it is yet. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna 3D print something. I'll bring it to SIGGRAPH at least, and anyone who is here who will also be at SIGGRAPH, I will give you that thing, and then I'll just keep whatever that thing is with me at all times. And then anyone here I ever see in person for any other reason, you will also get that thing. So just if you see me, say like, can I get that thing? And I'll say yes, absolutely, and I'll know exactly what you mean.
Exactly. So it's like a secret between. We can also look at the most people who ask most questions most is also something we can do. But it's a very nice
Yeah.
idea. Let's do that. We have also a few interesting stuff at the hackathon that we will reveal soon, related with this 3D printing thing. So I think it will be very interesting. Not only everything is digital, but we have something tangible in our hand that we can hold. Thank you everyone for these 2 hours being with us. But I think it was very enjoyable. And Alex, it was always a pleasure to really work with you closely and then bring back give back all the learnings that you guys are having in your professional work. So thank you everyone for joining us today and looking forward to seeing everyone on Thursday.